Good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Deegan, and it's a pleasure to be invited to give a lecture at the Manufacturing Chemist Conference, because chemistry graduate, Huddersfield Polytechnic, chemistry is my world, I guess, really. But I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry most of my career, principally in big pharma, led global audit teams. I'm a qualified person, but my main experience is auditing. I'm now the lecturer with RSSL on our auditing suite of courses. And I was asked to present on digital auditing, remote auditing, virtual auditing, whichever you would call it. So it's my pleasure to be able to give and share feedback, my experiences on how I've experienced remote auditing and what remote auditing might look for the future, I guess. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to use the ISO auditing model as the framework, really. There's a lot of experience in ISO, the ISO auditing standard. I'll talk about that a lot in a moment. But also as well, I want to sort of reflect on how we as a human race are evolving post the COVID pandemic, where everybody's now gone on Zoom as families. Everybody's started to use the recent sort of updates in the Microsoft software. Everybody's using Teams to socialize, to meet, etc., virtually. So what does that mean for us as an industry, as an organization, in terms of technology and embracing it and leveraging it, I guess? But one of the biggest areas that ISO shows us is to do that risk assessment, and it's about the risks of not achieving the audit objectives, and it's basic analysis before we do the audit. We always rush in to do audits, we always rush in to plan, prepare, switch on the machine, and so hopefully I'm going to give you some reflection on how ISO teaches to conduct and plan and prepare for audits. I'll talk about the planning phase, the design phase, what type of agendas, how you're going to access data, but also as well, are there any people in the audience who work for contract manufacturing organisations or companies who are audited by suppliers and companies? Yeah, hopefully I could share back my experience on how we feel from the auditor point of view, how we see that, turn back the mirror and say, well, how can we work more collaboratively with our auditees as well as our auditors? So I hope that helps as an agenda. So ISO teaches us that an audit is a systematic but an independent documented process for obtaining objective evidence. You go into an audit and you're looking for evidence that conformance is being achieved. This is different approach in ISO than GXP, GMP, GCP, GDP. In the ISO looks for conformance first, and are you making it correctly, are your processes working correctly? It could be argued that within a GXP context, we're probably focusing more on the deficiencies first, but looking at the pharmaceutical quality system second. So that's really important to me. The ISO requires us to look for objective evidence. In a virtual environment, you can't see it in front of you, you can't touch it, you can't watch it happening, you've got a computer screen in front of you. So we're going to explore that as a capability. There is a requirement and a mandate enshrined in the legal corpuses. GMP, GDP, audits must be achieved. Look at the API QP declaration, and interesting in that declaration, the date of the audit and the outcome must be recorded. This was straight from the new 2022 Orange Guide. The marketing authorization applicant has a responsibility to confirm that such audits have been carried out prior to the submission in the application phase. GDP, maintaining the integrity of the supply chain is one of the most important aspects of wholesale distribution. We were talking, Hitesh was giving the Pharma 4.0 presentation this morning, and we were talking about criminality and its wide access, etc. That's why, because of falsified medicines, and in the clinical space, that's a really increasing now as a risk. But the licensed wholesale dealer must ensure their suppliers are appropriately licensed. So we're working a lot in GDP now with regards to audit training to help the GDP environment. improve and increase its auditing capability. So I'm going to cover a lot of the objective evidence requirements. So it is expanding. We had a global COVID pandemic, which sort of accelerated the need. EMA authorised remote audits as acceptable, as a mitigating risk. Not an obviation, not a removal, but acceptable, because face-to-face is clearly our primary experience at the moment. But interesting, if you go to the ISO auditing standard, ISO 19011, and the appendix, this was approved in 2018. There's a new one coming along soon. But it talks about remote audits, non-human methods of auditing. So it's nothing new. It's just that it's accelerated over recent years with advancements in technology. We were talking about Pharma 4.0. There are advances in digitalisation of systems and its data and the ability to access that data. That's hard enough on an on-site audit, so remote audit provides an even greater challenge, I guess. But there are benefits to virtual auditing. I don't have to travel on a plane every week now as a contract auditor. I can do remote audits. It gives me a work-life balance. There are clearly cost savings, but also as well sustainability, environmental impact savings. There's a real benefit, but there are barriers, and I'm going to explore those barriers a bit more in detail as we go through the talk today. And it's all mostly, in my opinion, two elements: human behaviour, human processes, and I think that's really where we can really make an advantage and hopefully share my experiences. That makes sense. ISO have 7 auditor key principles. They're all there in front of you, but how do you want to be seen as an auditee? How do you want to be seen as an auditor across that interface, across that human discussion? We have to talk. We're not at Pharma 5, 6 or 7 yet, where it's all digitalised and we've designed the human out, and ICHQ 12 is coming through to help us, digitalise the batch data, etc. So we've still got to maintain those behaviours and augment those behaviours in an auditing scenario, whether virtual or not. Virtual provides a barrier to us. So hopefully my experiences shared today may give you some thought for how to maintain, sustain those in a virtual environment. But it is a two-way process. There's an auditor and there's an auditee, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship and partnership that sometimes we forget. My cut on it is that technology has advanced far quicker than human evolution at the moment. We are embracing technology, we're using technology, it's in our daily lives, it's how we meet, it's how we collate. I'm working on a catapult project as an independent consultant, and we talk with 6 or 7 companies on the same Teams call. That's amazing, we couldn't do that. So it's wonderful, but we need to maintain and we need to realise that it does not replace face-to-face, it augments face-to-face, but there are some minimum human behaviours that we forget we need to continue with. So I'm going to talk about human behaviours and the technology interface, and then we're going to talk about digitalisation, if that makes sense. So what relationship do we want between the auditor and the auditee? Clearly, this is a mutually beneficial partnership. The auditor comes across as professional. ISO put a lot of emphasis on how to assess competence of auditors. Auditors must be competent. The GMPs say that auditors must be trained and competent. The personnel must be trained in their role, etc. And an auditee will know instantly whether an auditor is competent or not, and that either augments or it deteriorates the relationship, because that then comes into the auditor gets frustrated because I'm not getting my information across. Well, you didn't prepare, you didn't ask me for that, says the auditee. So you've got that tension. Which sort of tension do you want? Do you want a positive, collaborative tension, or do you want a barrier tension? Okay, that's on site-to-site audits even. So how bad is it going to be if you've got a screen in front of you and you're thousands of miles away, different time zone, and sorry, I can't get you that on my screen. That's that tension. So I want to explore that a bit more. And in this evolutionary race, technology has advanced more than the humans can cope. And we forget we can't be human when we've got technology barriers in front of us. And therefore, and please, this is a real pet hate of mine about people. We now got Wi-Fi in our homes. We're all working from home. We've got Wi-Fi in the company, etc. Wi-Fi is a very weak radio signal, full of interference. Put a wire in your computer, link it to your router, because you get dropouts. And again, this is this professional persona that you're trying to put across. Wi-Fi signals compete with everybody. You know, my 15-year-old son has got a massive gaming PC. I've only got 60 megabytes at home. When he's downloading a file, I've got no internet. You know, it's really simple stuff. But we don't use the video camera to emulate face-to-face interactions. So I was having a video conference with a colleague, and she says, I really don't like seeing myself. Well, when we're doing human interaction in a face-to-face meeting, we don't see ourselves. So we've got to overcome that barrier, and we've got to understand how do you work in a virtual environment when you can see things differently. They are different, so don't treat it like a site-to-site audit, etc. That's why people switch their video off, etc. The video is not for you. It's for the other person seeing you to develop that personal relationship and gain that trust, etc. Audio, please get a headset. Please get something. I use professional Rode microphones now because we do online training in RSSL, and they need to be clear. I even do a test audio, a test recording on Teams. Play it back to me. How am I coming across visually and auditorily? Is that a word, auditorily? I just made it up. Fantastic. One for the dictionary, training dictionary there, Kasia. But you see what I'm saying? You know, think about that. And then we just log on, and we expect the software to work, and we know what to do. We don't know what to do. We don't know about breakout rooms. We're all, right? And you're in a meeting. If you're in a meeting room, you know what a meeting room is. You've got lots of years of experience of it. You've got your laptop open, you can run it. So there's a barrier to technology, competence of the human in that regard. I will talk about sharing applications over the screen. It is the biggest challenge that we've got. But I think that from an auditor and an auditee perspective, we've got immature, maybe thinking on the technology. There's some amazing technology out there to help and support us, but we're amateurs at it. And because this evolution hasn't caught up yet. That's my personal opinion. Okay. You know who you are in these diagrams, okay? These are standard diagrams. I've mocked up, I could take printouts, screen prints of every lecture that I do. But please, how many people have got blinds in their kitchen and they sit behind the blinds and they're absolutely... What does that tell about your behaviours, about your engagement, about your interest? Okay? Would you go into a meeting room and stand behind a screen and talk to somebody? Think that way. This is this evolution. We're not used to this. In the middle, I can see myself, but I'm not lit. And again, people don't realise the daylight is 1,000 times stronger than room light. But would you go into a meeting room at 4 o'clock in the UK in December when it's dark outside and switch the lights off in the meeting room? No, you wouldn't. And the other one as well is, what does that say about trust? Am I working on it? I've got two screens. We've all got two screens. It's great. And it's sometimes incredibly difficult. But humans like face-to-face. Okay? That's the standard environment. That's in my home office. I've got 2 ring lights. They cost £9 each from Amazon. And I light myself up, and it's there. Also as well, you go on YouTube and you look at these influencers and the way they've lit their whole environment. They are trying to influence you to purchase their product. I'm trying to influence, as an auditor, my auditee. You can trust me, I'm clear, you can see me, and I'm face-to-face. This is how we normally act together as humans. So put a bit of thought behind it, please, because it is a bugbear of mine. When I'm doing an audit, when we're doing a training course in RSSL, we've now set minimum standards, particularly in a training environment. I can't do the person at the top. We had a training course last week, and I had to say, look, I'm really sorry, can you turn around? I can't see you, I can't see your body language, I don't know whether you're engaged. As a trainer, I need that feedback. Well, as an auditor, an auditee, I also need that feedback. Sorry to labour it, but we need to move as a human race a bit further to the right. There are great technologies starting to emerge. That's a picture, actually, of an owl system. I don't know if you've ever known that, but that's got little 4 cameras on the top and an audio, and it just shows 360 pano using a bit of AI, everybody in the room. So back in the day, when I used to work in regulatory affairs, and we had a teleconference with the FDA for an end of phase 2 meeting, and there were 8 people in the room. 2 of them were just observers, and we introduced 5 people. One of the people that we hadn't introduced coughed, and FDA just went, terminate. Because we hadn't introduced, what are you hiding? It's about that trust. If you can see, usually there's lots of people in the room. Who's in the room? Who am I talking to? How can visualization technology, all the great new technology that's coming out, embrace it to see? And this owl, just as an example, when a person talks, it focuses on them. There's other different brands available. But think about that, particularly from an auditee perspective. Usually it's just one auditor on a screen, but you've got a bunch of people in the room who you want to be able to interact with, and it's like a meeting room. Document sharing is really hard. It's probably the biggest challenge we've got, particularly if it's digitalised, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We can do digital access, but a lot of companies still have paper records, paper back sheets, etc. This is actually for a friend of mine who works for a stamp auction company, and they photograph their stamps. They've got a rostrum, they've got a camera on top. You could easily put that as one of the Teams meetings, and you can visualize. They can put the record under there. They can zoom with the camera. I'm seeing the live record on the screen as we are on a rostrum. Simple techniques like that. And then there are the 360 cameras, the virtual. It's a great challenge, I feel, that do you have a live view or do you have a pre-recorded view? It's on the public web, and so I can say it, but I think PharmaServe Northwest in Runcorn, they make metered dose inhalers on their website. They've got an Instax 360 virtual tour that you could go on there and metered dose inhaler plant. Visualization as an auditor is a great idea. Live view is important, but how can I visualize what's going on rather than be explained to what's going on? Back in 1995, I worked for Zeneca then, and it was a great privilege to build a sterile plant from the ground up. And we invited the FDA in, and they went, can't see anything. There's a door, and then bye-bye, you can't see anything. Well, our operators are trained, and they work really well, but I can't see them. So we put massive windows in. We actually put cameras in, remote cameras in. Oh my gosh, union straight in. What are you doing watching my staff, etc. But then we showed them the views. We helped it as a training and augmenting training, particularly interventions, etc. When the staff started to use it, and I want to see what I did, I want to see how we did. We'd had an intervention. Were we walking correctly? This is a clean room exhibition as well. And it's about that meaningful, purposeful movement. You can put it as a positive value proposition. And now we've got technology where we can put intrinsically safe, small GoPros, etc. in the environment. There are emotional barriers, industrial relations barriers, but this is where we've got to think about either design or retrofit of areas where people movements are really important to see, like clean rooms. Have a think about it, because the auditor can just watch it. Clearly, the recording of it is an issue, but just watching it live says 1,000 words, And the next sterile plant that we built, we just put a glass wall right between there with offices. There was offices and there were clean rooms, and they were able to talk on the intercom and talk face to face. How can you visualize that virtually? I think it's really important. So, how would you plan a virtual audit? Okay. There's no real difference to planning a normal or a site-based audit, a visualization audit, but it's thinking differently. There's different steps in it. It's working with the auditee much earlier than with a site-based audit, okay? Because you've got to, how are we going to communicate? What is our video tool? Is it going to be Teams? Is it Zoom? We will use Adobe Connect, which is like a much more competent system that we use in RSSL because we can share documents together and go into better meeting rooms and breakout rooms, etc. How will you show me your documents? How will you show me your records? Can I have them in advance? That's the biggest barrier. Sorry, you can only see it during the audit. Well, okay, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But again, how am I going to visualize? Can you send me a pre-recorded video? Will I be able to see the live? It's asking those questions well in advance of the audit because it's not a classic human-based interaction. You can't go on the factory tour. You can't go downstairs and look and watch, etc. Then you send a plan to the auditee, which is standard, but it talks about, we have agreed this, we have agreed that, we need to overcome this as a barrier. But then you reiterate that 2 weeks, are we still okay? Have we got any passwords? Have we got any training that we need to do, etc. ISO, we are IRCA certified, the International Register of Certified Auditors, and our latest IRCA lead auditor, we had a review by IRCA, and they said, at the opening meeting, you need to put training mechanisms in where the auditor actually has to make a decision. I am not going to meet my audit objectives. I will terminate this audit. Whereas, unfortunately, with lack of planning, we're on site, we've travelled, it's not going well, we're not meeting our audit objectives, I have to continue, but I'm not going to be successful in the audit. Well, that's that advanced thinking. Here are the requirements for my audit in a virtual environment. These are the minimum requirements and objectives. And if they're not going to be met, we might have to terminate the audit. IRCA, ISO require us to do a risk assessment. This is not a risk assessment on the product or process, but it's what could go wrong with the audit. In our training courses, we've almost a whole day of practice and case studies where the auditee, we haven't told them, but they've got to do their risk assessment. We want them to say, stop. This isn't working, because as an auditor, you just sort of try and go on and try and do your best, but this is that pre-thinking. You know, particularly in a virtual environment, what technology, am I pre-trained on that technology? Have we practiced our interviews? Have we understood how to use break rooms? Do we have time to review the data online, which takes a bit longer, etc.? What will make a success? And then you communicate that to the auditee. I put a lot of emphasis on pre-training of the audit team. In our audit training courses, we do virtual extensions, and they've got to really understand the limitations and visualize that technology. Why not practice a one-on-one Teams meeting with you and your co-auditor in advance to play in a role play? That's what we do all the time, because then you're practiced and you're aware of scenarios and you're confident to walk through the door. ISO 17021 is a third-party assessment of companies wanting ISO 9001 accreditation, but we take this particularly from our RSSL training. They have what they call stage 1 and stage 2 audits. A stage 1 is a documentation review. Is your documented quality management system fit for purpose before I even come and have a look at you? And what ISO say is that there may be circumstances where it's not good enough, so I can't come and audit you until you fixed it. And what we're proposing is that you do that as a document review of the pharmaceutical quality system or the processes. IRCA talk about a non-human interaction method. This is just sat down in advance reviewing the documents. I'll talk about the audit agenda and how we could exploit that in a minute. But it gives you also as well a good rounded understanding to go in to then ask the requirement. ISO do the stage 1, is your documented system adequate? And then stage 2 is the field work, the site audit, or the virtual audit, which says, are you conforming with what you've written down? This is not a non-compliance audit, are you conforming? Have I got this objective evidence to verify that what you say you did, you are doing, and you've got the data to prove it? So he's splitting it into two. It's a huge risk mitigator for me when I do virtual audits, because one of the great barriers from auditees, sorry, you can only see our SOPs on site, or sorry, you can only see our SOPs on the day. We can't pre-share that information. That's commercial in confidence proprietary. My usual polite response is, we understand we need to work together. What I really want to say is, I've seen thousands of the same document, guys. You're not any different. Why are you creating artificial barriers? I can't say that. But again, this document review is a really powerful way of understanding the system before then, because in a virtual audit, you're more compressed for time and capability. And it then just says, can you show me this? Can you show me that? Can you show me this? Again, it's a great technique in auditing anyway, because you've gained that knowledge of the system and the process before you're asking. Whereas normally, untrained auditors go in and they're asking the same at the same time, and no wonder they run out of time. And they don't get to the real deal, because I've got to read this whole document. So, how would you put an audit agenda together for a virtual audit? Again, what I would say in advance with the auditee, I need to do a document review. Stage 1 audit is a technical phrase used by audit. I need to do the document review first. Okay, I'll have a half day with that. There might need to be an observer or somebody who takes me of, if it's a visualized system, you've got your TrackWise, your Viva, Quality Docs, etc., to kind of have a look, and your training record systems. Somebody might have to operate that. Fine, let them do that. But that's that advanced work as part of that part 1 agenda. And then you do the formal audit itself in terms of the opening meeting. Again, visualization. Is everybody here? Are the subject matters experts here? Are they all working from home on the same site? How am I going to access them? Do they have adequate video? Do they have adequate audio? Again, if not, I'm going to consider terminating the audit, because I cannot meet my audit objectives back to the audit client. That's really what we put a lot of emphasis on our training courses, to make sure that the auditor can be successful. But if they're not, I might have to either rejig the time, re-come back, or at least terminate it in that regard. Okay. Then you talk about the site process, your visualization tool. You've asked in advance, can I have that? Pre-recorded video is really good, but you need to see the live action. How are you going to do that? If it's not possible, how are you going to verify that conformity is being achieved, that objective evidence? What evidence do you need? That might be a challenge to you as an auditor. Not every company can do that. Not everybody is technically capable. Not every company is willing to do that. But your risk assessment beforehand and your pre-planning should have resolved how you're going to see the system going. What's my critical information that I need to see? Breakout rooms are great for interviews, etc. They may need observers with you, but again, if you've got 2 or 3 auditors and you do a site audit, I'll go do the labs, you do the warehouse. It's the same process, multitasking. So learn how to use breakout rooms as an audit team. You have to come back as an audit team and have your private meeting as your audit team to gather your thoughts, etc. Do you want to do that on the same live feed? Do you want to log off and have your own meeting, then log back on, etc. for security? It's those prior thinkings. Document sharing and record sharing. We've talked about the rostrum cameras, etc. That is the biggest barrier, I think. You can have a teleconference. I'm trying to advocate that human face-to-face relationship together. But the document sharing is the biggest challenge. Either paper records, how we're going to see them, they're systematized, they're data we can't give you access to our system, screen sharing, etc. You're just going to have to work in advance. I've got some ideas on a few slides, on the next slide, should I say. But again, it's no different to a site-based audit. There's just different components and different methods and different risks associated with it. And this is what I'm advocating. Be a competent auditor first, and then leverage the virtual capabilities to your advantage. So, biggest challenge today, because technology is advancing more than the human behaviours, is the access to the systems. We're all now, well, a lot of companies are now putting all their data on systems. You've got Viva, you've got TrackWise, you've got SharePoint, you've got all these systems, etc., which are data in the cloud as well. we were talking about Pharma 4.0, we were talking about data integrity, we were talking about these maturity models. We're not there yet in being able to understand that that's an auditing need, therefore these systems are designed. They still need a human interface. I'm working on a catapult project that we're actually trying to digitalise QP release. But at the moment, they've got to log onto system 1, log onto system 2, log onto system 3, a human. These are electronified systems. They've got data, but it's still a human workflow. We need to think differently about digital workflows and embrace that, but build it and design it for being an auditor. But you can access the information with advanced planning, advanced discussion. Some companies say, we'll give you the key documents, key procedures on a SharePoint, which has got timed. That's when you do your stage 1, your documentation review the day before, not during the audit because you haven't got that amount of time. Okay, you have challenges about, sorry, these are controlled documents. Lovely. How do you want to play it? I need objective evidence and I need to be able to read these, without which I can't meet my audit objectives. How are you going to work with me? How are we going to do it together? Okay. Blockers, sorry, it's proprietary information. I've seen it all before, mate. I really have. But how do you as an auditor say, you know, the requirements under the regulations and the guidance require me to audit this, to verify conformance. How are you going to show me conformance? Put the agenda on the auditee, because they're saying no means, you know, I don't want to work with you. I appreciate I've been in an audit where I've given non-conformances and the auditee has gone, meh. And I said, well, hang on a minute, that's really important. They go, I sell 7 tons a day to the pharmaceutical, to the food industry. You buy 50 bags a month off me. I don't really need your business. How are you going to react to that? That's one of the belligerent responses. But my response is, this is a mutually beneficial partnership. We've got a human patient or an animal patient that we have got to safeguard the safety, health and quality of. That's the argument, that's the discussion. Again, you're trying to get objective evidence, you're trying to get information, etc. But it's the auditor integrity. Don't abuse that process for the next auditor coming along. You know, you have to demonstrate and give the auditee a positive experience. Say, thank you, that was useful. Now I know that information. Here's my findings, here's my objective evidence, and move on. You don't want to copy, you don't want to keep it, etc. Just like you can't take photocopies of SOPs away and things like that. You know, be wise and be professional, and you know, have that integrity and confidentiality and security, and win the partnership argument, really, rather than we had a bad experience with a previous auditor, so we don't do that now. Well, okay, thanks a lot for the previous auditor, as it is, exactly. And it's a collaborative relationship. In terms of the auditee, my advice to auditees, my experience is, as an auditor, this is a mutually beneficial commercial relationship. This is a partnership. There's a commercial transaction here. Both parties have a play in the game, as it were. Collaboration is really important. I appreciate that sometimes it can be adversarial, it can be blocking, but again, you go in as that at the procurement stage to say, how can we work together? This is why we're working together. We're obliged. This is a legal obligation for us to do so. That's, you know, it's not a defence, it's a requirement, and therefore that's why I'm here. I'm not just because I don't trust you. I'm there to satisfy the health needs of our patients, of our nation and our society. Would encourage you to invest in the technology. Think like an auditor. Turn the mirror back. How do I need? How can I provide access rather than deny access? Okay, within my own data integrity, within my own security. FDA, for example, and now, you know, I used to work in regulatory affairs many years ago, and the FDA, it was Bob Temple from CEDA, and he says, I don't need your ECTD submission, I just need to access your data. Fine. Well, how can you think about what data is required to provide objective evidence and verification that you are working in conformance? How can I split that up? How can I pull that together? How can I give you some pre-information? There is a risk that an auditor may well say, okay, that's a pre-prepared package, I appreciate that, I want to see it live, I want to see some records. But again, it's building up that trust layer, isn't it? This seems credible, that says the same story, that says the same story. It's pre-thinking about that, etc. Biggest challenge to me is find a way to visualize records. Paper, have a rostrum camera so that the auditor can see that, or put the documents, particularly documents and procedures. I personally see no value in being a barrier to access to procedures because they're industry standard. There's nothing proprietary per se about that. You're probably under a confidentiality agreement. It's a false barrier, is what I'm saying, if that makes sense. Finally, really, I want to talk about auditor competence, and ISO 19011 is very, very clear. And I think a lot of the barriers and a lot of the issues that we face in virtual auditing are just issues we face in auditing, is that the auditor isn't competent, doesn't know how to prepare, doesn't communicate well with the auditee in advance. The auditee is sometimes surprised when the auditor turns up on site. It's a different agenda, or there's no agenda, or there's a new agenda, I've never seen it. It's the basics that will help you leverage that relationship more than putting clever cameras in. They just facilitate and augment that human need to visualize elements. And, you know, we put a lot of emphasis on the training side to evaluate competence. IRCA set the bar on the competence requirements. I liked what it says there is that the evaluation of auditor competence should be planned, should be implemented and documented. And the evaluation process should include determine the required competence to fulfill the needs of the audit programme. You've trained somebody on auditing. Have you trained somebody on virtual auditing? Have you assessed their capability in virtual auditing? Have you given them a mock audit? Have you done a mock audit in your preparation, in your interview, in your training? Because virtual auditing is different. It's a different skill. Sometimes it's a different behaviour. It's the same process, is what I'm arguing, is that, you know, those elements on the right are no different in a human-to-human audit or a virtual audit. There are just some different barriers, if that makes sense. We do provide in RSSL training on remote auditing. We do that online. In our auditing courses, which are IRCA certified, we've got to put the virtual non-human interaction audit in as well. So come and talk to us if you want to know more. But it's becoming much more of a demand now because of that increase in virtual auditing. Was that in June 2020 because of the pandemic? A sample of 75 in pharmaceutical companies. 67% of companies have done remote audits. So it's becoming the norm now. So we need to do more on that competence development, never mind the technological support. And technology support, the auditing process comes first. So I hope that's given my personal view on auditing, on the process of auditing, and the different requirements or different ways of thinking, or certainly the different ways of behaving to augment an auditing process, whether it be virtual or on-site. A lot of these behaviours are just regarding the 7 principles of auditing. I hope it's giving you think to reduce barriers, to be more collaborative, and as auditees, to be more supportive of the auditor and have a mutually beneficial relationship and partnership. So as an industry, we're more competent, we're much more able to verify through objective evidence that the safety, efficacy and quality for our patients is assured. I hope that was of use, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Before we take the first question, perhaps a comment from me.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating how companies can be fully compliant with helping inspectors from regulators, and when we come along, they switch off the video cameras, and that was the end of it. So there are two worlds. Anyway,
my response is, it's the same patient.
They don't care.
But
they don't
it's
care.
the same patient.
Yep, but it's money. But I totally agree with what you say.
Yeah.
Anyway, questions from the audience? Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So do you think there are aspects on which a virtual audit cannot compete with a face-to-face audit? Do we have some weaknesses that cannot be addressed?
Absolutely. Once again, EMA have said, and other agencies have said, we allow remote auditing, but it's not replaced. I think the biggest risk is the ability as a human to view the processes going on, to be able to view people and interview on the line. Hello, I'm Peter the auditor, tell me what you do, show me what you do. Cameras are really great, but they are a barrier, and there are risks of people playing to the camera, but you can't, when you walk around, you've got that auditor's eye, haven't you, to do that. I think the biggest risk is the visualization. I think technology can really embrace it. 360 cameras, virtual cameras, etc. Can probably look at clean rooms. We can't go in there as an auditor anyway. So to be able to do that and embrace it, I think is a real opportune moment for our industry. Hope that answers your question. Hitesh.
Great presentation. Thank you for the insights.
Very kind.
Just touching on because I didn't mention it in mine, or I didn't deep dive into AR and VR and, the immersive piece.
Yeah.
So as an auditor walking around a factory doing third-party audits, you could smell, temperature, sentient pieces. You're going to miss out on that on the 2D aspect with cameras. So my question to you is around, what's your thinking on that? Because obviously that takes it to the next level.
I'm working on a catapult project with the Centre for Process Innovation up at the Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Centre in Glasgow. And we're already, augmented reality has got far more advances than virtual reality and the HoloLens, and we're working with GSK and AstraZeneca, and they've got the HoloLens to do the machine work. Why not have an immersive augmented reality? My son's got the Oculus gaming. I went on it. It is amazing. You could visualize and walk through. That's the future, Hitesh.
No, it's really interesting, given the fact that there is as I mentioned it, the graphics card company that is doing that on the immersive side.
Yeah.
The point here is very much around AR is augmented, so it's reality first.
Yeah.
Augmented second to help you make decisions based on the data and the interactions. The immersive piece is that you are literally in that, and the question was around, when you're having these conversations, my analogy is the bowling lane, When you're teaching children how to bowl, you have the side guards up.
The rubbers, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe there's a bit of here about, educating the audience in a way that aligns, because then you remove some of those detrusting, if that's a word, aspects of it, right?
Yeah, I think there's two responses to that. I think at MMIC, they're generally thinking of buying a holodeck because Audi train their people on, car maintenance, etc. Well, why can't we do that as an auditing capability? Design that in, Pharma 4, Pharma 5, quality maturity model, etc. My next door neighbour is a nuclear facilities inspector. Look, I live in Cheshire, I've done all right for myself. But we've got a lot of professionals in where I live. And I went to him and I said, do you do remote virtual auditing? And he went, oh, God, yes, we do. So it's not just our industry that's struggling, it's any industry. But I think, technology can embrace it, but make sure you don't forget to pick up the human being and their evolution at the same time. Otherwise, you'll have a car crash, literally. Thank you. Good question, Hitesh.
Thank you very much. Right. So I think we go on to
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.